Captain stood on the bridge of his survey vessel, staring at the readings that made no sense. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he tried to understand what his instruments were telling him. The planet below should have been dead. Every record in the Dominion's extensive database said so. The planet had a designation, TB-447. It was a worthless rock orbiting a dying star that poured deadly radiation across its surface. They had surveyed it 200 years ago and marked it as uninhabitable. Nothing could survive there. The radiation levels would kill most known species within days, even with the best protective equipment. Yet his sensors were picking up life signs, not just simple bacteria or hardy microbes, but complex life. Vegetation, structures, energy signatures that suggested technology. "Science officer, verify these readings," ordered. His voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded survey missions for 30 cycles. A younger with pale blue skin worked at her station with quick movements. "Readings confirmed, Captain. I show multiple heat signatures consistent with intelligent life. Atmospheric composition has shifted from our records. Oxygen levels are higher. There is definitely something down there." Felt a strange unease settle in his chest. They prided themselves on their knowledge. They had mapped thousands of worlds, countless species, and built an empire on their understanding of the galaxy. Finding out they had been wrong about a planet troubled him more than he wanted to admit. "Prepare a landing party," he said. "I want to see this with my own eyes." The shuttle descended through the planet's atmosphere, watched through the viewport as the surface came into view. The land was harsh and rocky, with deep canyons cutting through rust-colored stone. But between the rocks he saw green. Plants were growing in sheltered areas. Water flowed in narrow streams at the bottom of the canyons. "Radiation levels?" he asked. The pilot checked his instruments. "Hi, Captain. Not immediately lethal with our suits, but I would not want to spend more than a few hours exposed." "Yet something lives here," muttered. They landed on a flat area near one of the larger canyon systems. As the shuttle door opened, activated his protective suit's full shields. The rest of his landing party did the same. 6 in total, armed with both scanning equipment and defensive weapons. They had walked for only 10 minutes when they found the first structure. It was crude by standards, built from salvaged metal and local stone. But it was clearly the work of intelligent beings. Solar panels covered the roof, tilted at precise angles to catch the light from the dying sun. "Movement ahead," announced the security officer. 3 figures emerged from behind a nearby building. They were bipedal, standing about the same height as but built differently. Thicker limbs, denser bodies, and only 2 eyes. Recognized them immediately from the Dominion's species database. "Humans." One of them stepped forward, a male with gray hair and sun-darkened skin. He wore simple clothes that looked handmade, and he carried no weapons. His face showed the lines of age, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "Welcome to Haven's Edge," the human said in passable standard language. His accent was rough but understandable. "We have been expecting visitors eventually." Was too surprised to respond immediately. The human spoke their language. That meant they had been monitoring Dominion communications. But more than that, the human was standing there in the open air, wearing no protective suit at all. "You are exposed to deadly radiation," finally said. "You should be dying." The human smiled. It was a strange expression, showing teeth, but its cultural database suggested it was meant to be friendly. "I am Daniel Hart, leader of this colony," the human said. "And yes, we are aware of the radiation. We have been living with it for 80 years. "That is impossible," said from behind. "No organic being can survive that long in these conditions without extensive protection." Daniel's smile widened slightly. "Impossible is a word we stopped using a long time ago. Would you like to come inside? We can talk more comfortably there, and I can introduce you to the others." Hesitated, every instinct told him something was wrong here, but he was a scientist before he was a soldier. He wanted to understand. "Lead the way," he said. Daniel guided them through the settlement. More humans appeared as they walked, dozens of them. Men, women, and even children, all of them exposed to the air, all of them looking healthy and strong. The children were playing some kind of game, running and laughing without any sign of distress. The settlement was larger than had first thought. Buildings were tucked into the canyon walls, using the natural stone for protection. Gardens grew in terraced levels, filled with crops that should not have been able to survive here. Everything was simple and functional, but it worked. Daniel took them to a larger building near the center of the settlement. Inside, it was cool and dimly lit. Several other humans were waiting. Daniel introduced them one by one. This is Karen, our chief engineer, Gregory Foster, our medical officer, and Lisa Monroe, who keeps us all fed. Each human nodded in greeting. They all looked at them with curiosity but no fear. That bothered almost as much as their impossible survival. Most species showed some nervousness when meeting them for the first time. The Dominion's reputation as a powerful force in the galaxy usually inspired caution at the very least. "You said you have been here for 80 years, said, addressing Daniel. "How is that possible? This planet should have killed your ancestors within months." Daniel exchanged glances with the other humans. There was something in their expressions that could not read. Not quite pride, not quite sadness, something more complex. "Our ship crashed here during an evacuation mission," Daniel explained. "There were 43 survivors. We had limited supplies and no way to call for help. Our equipment said we would be dead within a year from the radiation alone." "But you survived," said. "We did," Daniel confirmed. "Though not all of us. The first 5 years were hard. We lost 21 people. The rest of us should have died too, but we did not." "Why not?" asked. She had her scanner out, taking readings of everything in the room. Daniel looked at Gregory, the medical officer. The older man stepped forward. He was tall for a human, with silver hair and steady hands. "We adapted," Gregory said simply. "Our bodies changed. We did not plan it. We did not engineer it. It just happened." Felt his skin grow cold despite his suit's temperature controls. Genetic adaptation does not work that fast. Evolution takes thousands of generations. "For most species, yes," Gregory agreed. "But humans have always been good at surviving in places we should not. We come from a planet that tried very hard to kill us for millions of years. Maybe that taught us something." Karen, the engineer, spoke up. "We have documented everything, Captain. Medical records, genetic samples, environmental data. We knew someone would find us eventually. We wanted there to be proof of what happened here." Looked at each of the humans in turn. They met his gaze steadily without flinching. There was something in their eyes that made him deeply uncomfortable. They were not boasting. They were not trying to impress him. They were simply stating facts. And those facts challenged everything the Dominion believed about the nature of survival and strength in the galaxy. "I would like to see your data," said slowly. "All of it." Daniel nodded. "Of course. Take as much time as you need, Captain. We have nothing to hide." The next morning, Daniel gave them a tour of the entire colony. Had spent the night reviewing the human records, and nothing he had read prepared him for what he was about to see. They started in the underground farms. Karen led them down a series of tunnels cut into the canyon walls. The passages were wide enough for 2 people to walk side by side, and lights powered by solar batteries lit the way. "We built all of this in the first 10 years, Karen explained as they walked. "We had some tools from the crashed ship, but most of it we made by hand." The tunnel opened into a vast cavern, stopped at the entrance, stunned by what he saw. Rows upon rows of plants grew under artificial lights. The air was humid and warm, filled with the smell of growing things. Water dripped from irrigation pipes, feeding each plant with precision. "How did you power all of this?" asked, her scanner working constantly. "Your energy signature is too small for an operation this size." Karen walked to a control panel on the wall. "We use every bit of power we can get. Solar during the day, thermal from deep underground at night. We even capture static electricity from the dust storms. Nothing goes to waste." Examined the equipment more closely. It was old technology, barely functional by Dominion standards. Some of the parts looked like they had been repaired dozens of times, yet everything worked. The system was crude but effective. "This should not be enough power," he said. "You are right," Karen admitted. "By normal calculations, we should need 3 times more power to run this farm, but we learned to make things more efficient. We had to. It was either that or starve." Lisa, the agricultural specialist, joined them in the cavern. She picked a ripe tomato from one of the vines and offered it too. "Try it," she said. "It is safe for your species." Took the fruit carefully. His suit had filters that would allow him to taste it. He bit into the tomato and was surprised by the strong flavor. It was good. Very good, actually. "The plants adapted too," Lisa explained. We had seeds from Earth crops, but they would not grow here at first. The soil was wrong. The radiation damaged them, but we kept trying, and eventually some of them started to change. Now they grow better here than they ever did on Earth." "Impossible," the security officer muttered. Lisa shrugged. "We stopped saying that word a long time ago." They left the farms and climbed back to the surface. Daniel led them to the edge of the settlement, where several humans were working on a large machine. It looked like some kind of generator, but could not identify the design. "This is one of our magnetic shield generators," Daniel said. "We built 3 of them around the colony. They create a field that deflects some of the radiation." Moved closer to examine it. "This design is inefficient. The power core is too small to generate a field strong enough to make a difference." One of the workers, a young woman with dark hair tied back, looked up from her work. "It should not work, but it does. We figured out how to amplify the field using the planet's own magnetic currents. Took us 15 years to get it right." "What is your name?" asked. "Karen," the woman said, then smiled. "Wait, no, that is Karen over there. I am sorry, I forget you are meeting a lot of us at once." Noticed how casually the humans worked. They wore light clothes that left their arms and faces exposed. They breathed the air without filters, and they showed no signs of radiation sickness at all. "Where is your protective equipment?" he asked. Looked confused for a moment, then understood. "Oh, you mean suits and masks? We do not need them anymore. I mean, we have some old ones for emergencies, but we have not used them in years." "The radiation levels here would kill my people in hours, even with suits," said carefully. "You are standing in it with bare skin." "I know," said. She held up her arm, showing skin that was tanned but healthy. "My grandmother died from the radiation when she was 40. My mother lived to 65. I am 38, and I have never been sick a day in my life. My daughter will probably live even longer." Gregory, the medical officer, stepped forward. "Captain, would you like to see our medical records? I think they will answer many of your questions." They moved to the medical center, another building built into the canyon wall. Inside, it was clean and organized. Simple equipment lined the walls, most of it salvaged from the crashed ship and modified over the years. Gregory pulled up files on a computer screen. "I have been tracking our genetics since the crash. Watch this." He showed them a graph that tracked genetic changes over time. The first generation of survivors had normal human DNA, but starting around year 5, mutations began to appear. By year 10, significant changes were visible. By year 20, the colonists' DNA looked different from baseline humans in dozens of ways. "Your cells are repairing radiation damage," said, staring at the data. "In real time, I have never seen anything like this." "Neither had we," Gregory said. "At first, we thought it was some kind of disease. People were changing, and we did not know if it was good or bad. But then we noticed we were getting stronger, healing faster, living longer despite the conditions." He pulled up another file. "Here is my own medical scan from this morning. I am 73 years old. By human standards, I should be weak and fragile, but look at my cellular structure. My body is repairing itself constantly. I am healthier now than I was at 40. Felt dizzy. This contradicted everything he knew about biology and evolution. Species did not change this fast. Adaptation took time, thousands of generations of slow changes. But these humans had done it in 3 generations. "How?" he asked. Gregory shook his head. "We do not fully understand it ourselves. The best theory we have is that human biology is more flexible than most species. We evolved on a harsh planet, and our bodies learned to adapt quickly to new threats. When we came here, our bodies saw the radiation as just another threat, so they adapted." "But the cost," said. "You said you lost 21 people in the first 5 years." 22, Daniel corrected quietly. "We lost one more in year 6. Their bodies could not make the change. It is our greatest tragedy. We remember every one of them." The room fell silent for a moment. Understood loss. Every species did. But there was something profound about what these humans had endured. "Let me show you something else," Daniel said, breaking the silence. He led them outside to where a group of children were playing. The kids ranged from about 5 to 15 years old. They were running around, climbing rocks and laughing. One boy was hanging from a cliff edge 20 feet up, holding on with just his hands. "That is," Daniel said. "He is 12. He was born here. He has never lived anywhere else." As they watched, dropped from the cliff and landed on the ground below. It should have broken his legs, but he just rolled and came up running. He waved at the adults and went back to playing. The children are stronger than we were, Lisa said. Faster, their senses are sharper, can see in near darkness. Emma over there can hold her breath for almost 10 minutes. They are becoming something new. Something better adapted to this world, Gregory added. Watched the children play, and he felt something he rarely experienced. Fear. Not fear of violence or danger, but fear of being wrong about the nature of the universe. They had built their empire on the belief that technology was the answer to every problem. They modified their bodies with machines, enhanced their minds with computers, and conquered worlds by making them suitable for life. But these humans had taken a different path. They had not changed the world to suit themselves. They had changed themselves to suit the world, and it had worked. "We have been monitoring your people for a long time," Daniel said suddenly. "We know about the Dominion. We know how you expand, how you colonize worlds. You avoid places like this because you cannot easily make them into what you want." "That is logical," said. "Why waste resources on a world that fights against you?" Daniel nodded slowly. "That is one way to think about it, but there is another way. Every world you avoid is a world we could settle. Every harsh environment you consider worthless is a place where humans might thrive." The implications hit like a physical blow. The Dominion controlled hundreds of worlds, but they only settled the easy ones, planets with good atmospheres, mild radiation, and stable climates. They had dismissed thousands of other worlds as worthless. But if humans could adapt to any of those worlds the way they had adapted here, then those worlds were not worthless at all. They were simply waiting for the right species to claim them. "You are not afraid of us," said. It was not a question. "No," Daniel said simply. "We respect your strength, but we are not afraid. We learned a long time ago that survival is not about who has the best weapons or the fastest ships. It is about who can endure when everything else fails." Looked at the humans around him, at Daniel with his weathered face and steady eyes, at Karen and her impossible machines, at Gregory with his revolutionary medical data, at the children playing in radiation that would kill most species. That evening called a meeting with his crew back at the shuttle. They gathered in the small cargo bay, away from human ears. The captain had disabled all external communications temporarily. What they needed to discuss was too important to risk being overheard. "Report," said to. The science officer pulled up her data pad. Her hands were shaking slightly, which found disturbing. Never showed fear. "Captain, I have run every test I can with our equipment," she said. "The results are consistent and terrifying. These humans have rapid evolutionary adaptation. Their cells repair damage at rates that should be impossible. Their immune systems are operating at efficiency levels 3 times higher than baseline humans. Their bone density has increased by 40%. Their muscle tissue is denser and stronger." "All of this from living here?" asked. "Yes," confirmed, "but it gets worse. I analyzed the children separately. The second generation born here shows even more extreme adaptations, and the third generation, the youngest children, are barely recognizable as the same species their great-grandparents were." Felt his stomach's churn. "Explain." "The boy that we saw today," continued. "I scanned him when he was not looking. His vision operates in a wider spectrum than normal humans. He can see into the infrared range. His hearing extends beyond normal human limits. His reaction time is 3 times faster than his ancestors, and this is normal for the children born here." "They are not just surviving," said slowly. "They are thriving." "More than that," said. "They are becoming something new, something specifically designed for this environment, and they did it in 3 generations." The security officer spoke up. "Sir, this raises serious questions about human expansion. If they can do this here, what stops them from doing it anywhere?" "Nothing," said quietly. "Nothing stops them." The crew fell silent. They all understood what this meant. The Dominion had always viewed humans as a minor species. Clever, yes, adaptable in some ways, but fundamentally limited by their biology and primitive technology. The Dominion had never considered humans a threat. That assessment might have been very, very wrong. The next day requested a private meeting with Daniel, Gregory, and Karen. They gathered in a small room in the medical center, deactivated his suit's external audio sensors. This conversation could not be recorded. "I need you to be honest with me," said without preamble. "What really happened here?" Daniel leaned back in his chair. He studied for a long moment before speaking. The crash was real, Daniel said. We were refugees from a colony that failed. The ship was old and barely functional. When we entered this system, the engines gave out. We crashed here because we had no choice. Go on, said. The first year was hell, Daniel continued. We had some supplies from the ship, but not much. The radiation started killing us immediately. People got sick, hair fell out, skin blistered. We buried the first 5 within 3 months. Gregory picked up the story. I was the only person with medical training. I watched people die and could do nothing to save them. We all thought we would be dead within a year. Some people wanted to give up. There was talk of ending it quickly rather than dying slowly from radiation sickness. What changed? Asked. We did, Gregory said simply. Around month 14, I noticed something strange. Some of the survivors who had been the sickest started getting better, not recovering exactly but stabilizing. Their symptoms stopped getting worse. I ran tests and found their cells were repairing damage almost as fast as the radiation caused it. Karen added, at first we thought it was temporary, but it kept happening. More people stabilized. We realized our bodies were changing at the genetic level. It was not something we did deliberately. We did not have the technology for genetic engineering. It just happened. Evolution does not work that fast, insisted. For most species, no, Daniel agreed. But humans have a history of rapid adaptation. We evolved on Earth, which was trying to kill us in 1,000 different ways. Ice ages, plagues, predators, natural disasters. Our bodies learned to change fast or die. When we came here, our biology did what it always does when faced with an extinction-level threat. It adapted. But the cost, said, 22 dead in the first 6 years. 22 who could not make the change, Daniel said, his voice heavy with old grief. Their bodies tried, but they died anyway. We carry that guilt every day. But if we had done nothing, all 43 of us would be dead. At least this way, some of us survived. Was quiet for a moment. Then he asked the question that had been bothering him since yesterday. Why did you let us find you? You said you monitor our communications. You could have hidden yourselves better, stayed silent, but you did not. The 3 humans exchanged looks. Karen spoke first. We talked about this for years, she said. Some of us wanted to stay hidden forever, but others argued that was not fair to our children. They deserve to know there are other species out there, other worlds to explore. We cannot keep them isolated forever just because we are afraid. Afraid of what? Asked. Of how people will react when they learn what we can do, Daniel said bluntly. We know how the galaxy works, Captain. Strong species dominate weak ones. We did not want anyone to see us as a threat. But you are a threat, said. You have to know that. If humans can adapt to any environment, you could settle worlds that no one else wants. You could expand into regions the Dominion has ignored. In a few centuries, there could be human colonies scattered across the galaxy, each one adapted to a different world. Would that be so bad? Lisa asked. She had entered the room quietly and now stood by the door. Would it be so terrible if humans found ways to live in places you do not want? Did not have an answer to that. The Dominion's expansion policy was based on control and territory. They claimed worlds and made them suitable for life. The idea of another species doing the same thing through biological adaptation rather than technology had never occurred to them. There is something else, Gregory said, something we have not told you yet. What? Asked, dreading the answer. Gregory pulled up a map on his data pad. It showed this sector of space with dozens of markers scattered across it. We are not the only ones, he said quietly. In the last 20 years, we have picked up radio signals from at least 15 other human colonies in extreme environments. We cannot communicate with most of them. Our equipment is too limited, but they are out there. Humans on high-gravity worlds, humans on ice planets, humans in systems with deadly solar flares, all of them surviving, all of them adapting. Felt cold, 15 colonies, where? Here, Gregory pointed to the map. And here, and here. Most of them are in regions the Dominion considers worthless. Radiation zones, extreme gravity wells, systems with unstable stars, places you surveyed once and never thought about again. Why did you not tell me this before? Demanded. Because we wanted you to see us first, Daniel said. We wanted you to understand what we are before you learned how many of us there are. We are not trying to build an empire, Captain. We are just trying to survive and give our children a future. but the galaxy needs to know that humans can live anywhere. We can adapt to any world, no matter how harsh. Stood abruptly and paced the small room. His mind was racing. 15 colonies, maybe more that had not been detected yet. Each one pushing the limits of human biology in different directions. Each one proving that humans were far more dangerous than anyone had realized. Not dangerous because they wanted to conquer. Dangerous because they could not be stopped by the usual limits that controlled other species. "What do you want from us?" asked finally. "Nothing," Daniel said. "We do not want your technology, we do not want your protection, we just want to be left alone to live our lives, but we also wanted the Dominion to know we exist, because eventually you will find more of us. And when you do, we want you to remember this conversation. Remember that we are not your enemies, we are just survivors doing what humans have always done, finding a way to live." Karen stood and walked too. She looked up at him, her eyes steady. "Your people built an empire on technology," she said. "You made yourselves stronger with machines and computers, that is impressive, but we took a different path. We became partners with nature instead of trying to conquer it. We let the universe change us instead of forcing it to change for us. Neither way is better or worse. They are just different." "The Dominion will not see it that way," said. "We know," Daniel said. "That is why we are telling you first. You seem like someone who can understand. Someone who can help your leaders see that humans are not a threat to be eliminated. We are just another species trying to find our place in the galaxy." Looked at each of them in turn. These people who had survived the impossible, who had changed themselves at the genetic level rather than give up, who had thrived in a place that should have been their grave. "I will make my report," he said finally. "I will tell the Dominion what I have found here, but I cannot promise how they will react." "We understand," Daniel said. "We are not asking for promises, just understanding." "One more thing," said. "The children and Emma and the others, they are not like you anymore, are they?" Gregory shook his head. "No, they are something new, something that has never existed before. Humans designed by radiation and harsh conditions instead of by choice. We do not know what they will become, but we know they will survive. That is what humans do best." Left the meeting with more questions than answers. He returned to his shuttle and stared at his report, trying to figure out how to explain what he had learned. "How do you tell your superiors that they have completely misunderstood an entire species? How do you X on the third day?" Daniel made an offer that surprised. "Would you like to see what we are really capable of?" the human leader asked over breakfast. Put down his food. The humans had been generous hosts, sharing their meals and homes, but he sensed this was different. "What do you mean?" he asked. "You have seen our settlement. You have read our medical data, but you have not seen us at work in the worst conditions this planet has to offer," Daniel said. "Today, a work crew is going to the radiation zone to gather mineral samples. You should come with us." "The radiation zone?" asked, alarm clear in her voice. "The canyon system extends about 30 miles east from here," Karen explained. "The radiation levels increase the further you go. At the far end, where the old ship reactor is buried, the levels are 10 times higher than here in the settlement. We need materials from that area for repairs." "That would be lethal even for us in full protective gear," said. "Yes," Karen agreed. "For your species, probably within minutes. For us, it is just another day of work." Considered refusing. Taking his crew into that kind of danger seemed reckless, but he needed to understand. He needed to see the full truth of what these humans were. "We will come," he said, "but my people will stay in the shuttle." "Fair enough," Daniel said. 2 hours later, they stood at the edge of what the humans called the radiation zone. Instruments screamed warnings at him. The levels here were extraordinary. His suit's shields were already working at maximum capacity. "This is where we stop," he told his crew. "You have the shuttle. If anything happens, return to the ship immediately." "Captain," she protested. "That is an order," he said firmly. Watched as 6 humans prepared for their trip deeper into the zone. They wore simple clothes and carried basic equipment. No protective suits. No radiation shields. They moved with calm efficiency, checking their tools and organizing their supplies. Daniel saw watching and walked over. "You look worried, Captain." "I am sending my crew back," said. "I will come with you alone. My suit can handle it for a while." "Are you sure?" Daniel asked. "You do not have to do this." "Yes, I do," said. "I need to see this with my own eyes. I need to be able to tell my people what I witnessed." Daniel nodded slowly. Then stay close to me, and if you start feeling sick, tell me immediately. We can get you back to safety. The crew headed into the canyon. The walls rose high on both sides, blocking out most of the sun. The ground was rough and covered in a strange, rust-colored dust that clung to everything. Suit sensors showed radiation levels climbing steadily. After 30 minutes of walking, they reached levels that should have been immediately fatal. Suit was using emergency power to maintain its shields. Warning lights flashed on his display. But the humans walked on without concern. They talked casually about the weather and work schedules. One woman named Helen sang an old song from Earth. Another man named Peter pointed out interesting rock formations. "How do you feel?" Daniel asked. "My suit is strained but functional," admitted. "How do you feel?" "Normal," Daniel said with a slight smile. "This is nothing compared to the old days. When we first started coming out here, we would get headaches and nausea. Now, it is like walking in the park." They stopped at a collapsed section of canyon wall. Exposed mineral deposits gleamed in the dim light. Karen examined the rocks with a practiced eye. "This is good quality ore," she said. "We can use this for the new generator housing." The crew got to work. They used simple tools to break apart rocks and collect samples, watched in fascination as they worked. Their movements were strong and sure. They showed no signs of fatigue or illness. One young man, maybe 20 years old, lifted a boulder that must have weighed 300 pounds. He carried it to a collection point and set it down gently. Then he went back for another one. "That is," Daniel said, following his gaze. "He was born here, second generation. He is about average strength for his age group." "Average," repeated faintly. "The kids are stronger than we were," Daniel confirmed. "They have to be. This world demands it." As they worked, took medical readings of the humans around him. His scanner showed impossible results. Their cells were repairing radiation damage in real time. When he watched at the molecular level, he could see damaged DNA being fixed almost instantly by specialized proteins that should not exist. "Gregory told me about the cellular repair," said, "but seeing it in action is different." "It had to develop," Daniel said. "The radiation does not stop. Every second we are exposed, our cells are being damaged. If we could not repair ourselves this fast, we would still die. Our bodies found a way." Helen called out from further down the canyon, "Daniel, come look at this." They walked over to where she stood pointing at a crack in the canyon wall, looked inside and saw something that made no sense. Plants were growing deep in the crack, where almost no light reached. But more than that, they were glowing slightly with a pale blue light. "Bioluminescence," Karen said, crouching down to examine them. "These plants have adapted to produce their own light. We have been tracking them for 5 years. They started as normal ferns from Earth. Now they are something completely different." "Everything adapts here," Lisa said, joining them. "The plants, the insects that survived from our original cargo, even the bacteria in the soil. This planet does not kill life, it transforms it." Felt dizzy, and not just from the radiation. The implications were staggering. This was not just about humans surviving. It was about life itself being reshaped by necessity and will. "We should head back," Daniel said, checking the time. "We have what we need." The return trip took another hour. By the time they reached the shuttle, Suit was flashing critical warnings. He had been exposed to more radiation than was safe, even with protection. He would need medical treatment back on the ship. But the humans looked fine. Better than fine, actually. They seemed energized by the work, laughing and joking as they loaded their collected materials onto a cart. Back at the settlement, went straight to the medical center. Gregory examined him carefully. "You will be fine," the human doctor said. "Your suit did its job, but you should rest for a few days and take these supplements. They will help your body clear the radiation faster." "Thank you," said. He paused, then asked, "How long could you survive in that zone without any protection at all?" Gregory considered the question. "Me personally, maybe 2 days before I started getting sick. The younger generation could probably last a week. The children who were born here, we do not know. We have never tested it because we do not need to." "A week," said in disbelief. "In radiation that would kill my people in minutes." "Yes," Gregory said simply. "That is what adaptation looks like, Captain." That evening, Daniel invited to observe a gathering of the colony children. About 20 kids ranging from 5 to 15 were meeting in a large open area. And Emma were there, along with many others, had not met yet. "What is this?" asked. "Education," Daniel said. "We teach them about Earth and human history. We teach them science and math, and we teach them about the galaxy beyond this planet." A young girl named Sophie stood up to give a presentation. She was maybe 10 years old, with dark hair and bright, intelligent eyes. "Today I want to talk about different types of species in the galaxy," she began. "Some species, like the, adapt using technology. They change their environment to suit their needs. That is smart and effective." She pulled up images on a simple projector. "Other species, like us, adapt biologically. We change ourselves to suit the environment. That is also smart and effective." "Both approaches have value," she continued. "Technology can be built and shared quickly, but biology is harder to destroy. If you lose your technology, you have to rebuild it. But if you have biological adaptation, you carry it in your genes forever." Was impressed by the maturity of her analysis. This child understood concepts that many adults struggled with. After Sophie finished, stood up. "I have been thinking about something," he said. "What if there was a way to combine both approaches? What if we could use technology to enhance biological adaptation, or use our biology to create better technology?" The other children began discussing the idea enthusiastically. They debated possibilities and shared theories. Their conversation was sophisticated and thoughtful. Daniel leaned over too. "The children are smarter than we were," he said quietly. "Not just physically stronger. Their brains work faster. They make connections we missed. We do not know if it is the radiation or just natural selection, but they are genuinely gifted." "What will they become?" asked. "We do not know," Daniel admitted. "Something new, something that has never existed before. We are just trying to give them the knowledge and values they need to use their gifts wisely." As watched the children discuss and debate, he realized something profound. These humans were not just surviving. They were not just adapting. They were evolving into something that might one day be greater than either baseline humans or technologically advanced species like the... They were becoming a bridge between nature and civilization, between biology and technology, between the old ways of adaptation and the new ways of progress. And the galaxy was not ready for them. Later that night, sat alone in the shuttle, writing his report. He tried to capture everything he had seen and learned, but words felt inadequate. How do you describe watching humans work in radiation that should be instantly lethal? How do you explain children who are smarter and stronger than their parents, with no genetic engineering involved? How do you convey the feeling of watching evolution happen in real time? He did his best. He documented everything with scientific precision. He included medical scans, environmental readings, and detailed observations. But he knew that no matter how well he wrote this report, the Dominion would struggle to believe it. Because what was happening here on this forgotten world challenged every assumption they had made about the limits of biological life. Transmitted his report to the Dominion Council 3 days later. He encrypted it with the highest security codes available. This information was too sensitive to risk being intercepted by other species. Then he waited. The response came faster than expected. Within 18 hours, the Council sent an urgent message. They wanted him to return immediately for a full briefing. They also sent specific instructions. Do not share any information about the human colony with anyone outside the Dominion. Do not alert other species to what he had found. That worried more than he wanted to admit. On his final day at the colony, Daniel invited him for a private conversation. They walked to the canyon rim and sat overlooking the settlement. The sun was setting, painting the rocks in shades of orange and red. "You are leaving tomorrow," Daniel said. It was not a question. "Yes," confirmed. "The Council wants my full report." "And what will you tell them?" Daniel asked. Was quiet for a moment. "The truth, that humans are far more adaptable than we believed, that your species represents something the galaxy has never seen before, that you could potentially settle worlds we consider uninhabitable." "And how will they respond to that truth?" Daniel asked. "I do not know," admitted. "Some will be fascinated, others will be threatened. The Dominion's power is built on controlling territory and resources. If humans can thrive anywhere, that changes the balance of power in the galaxy." Daniel nodded slowly. "We were afraid of that. That is why we isolated ourselves for so long. We did not want to be seen as a threat." "But you are a threat," said. Not because you want to conquer anyone, but because your very existence challenges the assumptions that hold the current order together. So what happens now? Daniel asked. That depends on the council, said. But I will argue for peaceful coexistence. I will tell them that humans are not enemies to be destroyed or rivals to be defeated. You are simply another species trying to survive. Will they listen? Daniel asked. Some will, said. I hope enough will. They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun disappear behind the canyon walls. Finally, Daniel spoke again. You know what the hardest part of all this was? He asked. It was not the radiation or the hunger or watching people die. It was the fear that we would be forgotten, that we would survive here for decades or centuries and no one would ever know we existed. Our children would grow up thinking they were alone in the universe. You are not alone, said, and now the galaxy will know you exist. Is that good or bad? Daniel asked with a slight smile. I do not know yet, admitted. Ask me again in 10 years. Daniel laughed, a sound that carried genuine warmth. Fair enough. The next morning, the entire colony gathered to see and his crew depart. The humans stood in a large group, from the oldest survivors to the youngest children, and Emma were in the front, waving enthusiastically. Karen approached and handed him a data drive. This contains copies of all our research, medical data, genetic sequences, environmental studies, everything we have learned about adaptation and survival. If your people want to study it, they are welcome to. Why give us this? Asked. Because knowledge should be shared, Karen said. We did not survive here just to keep secrets. Maybe something we learned can help other species someday. Maybe we can all learn from each other. Gregory added, we know we are different, but different does not have to mean dangerous. We hope your people can see that. Lisa stepped forward with a sealed container. These are seeds from our adapted plants. If any scientists want to study how life changes in extreme conditions, these might help. Accepted the gifts carefully. I will make sure the right people see these, and I will do everything I can to present you as the peaceful survivors you are. That is all we can ask, Daniel said. He extended his hand in the human gesture of friendship, had learned this custom and gripped the human's hand firmly. Thank you for your honesty, said, and for showing me something I thought was impossible. Thank you for listening with an open mind, Daniel replied. That is rarer than you might think. As the shuttle lifted off, watch the colony shrink below them. The humans stood waving until they were too small to see. Then the shuttle climbed higher, leaving the planet's atmosphere. Captain, said from her station, I have been analyzing all the data we collected. The implications are even larger than we thought. Explain, said. If humans can adapt this rapidly to extreme environments, and if there are already 15 other colonies doing the same thing, then within a few generations, there could be dozens of human subspecies, each one optimized for different conditions. Humans for high gravity, humans for ice worlds, humans for toxic atmospheres. The potential for diversity is enormous. And the potential for conflict, added grimly. If humans spread across the galaxy and adapt to every environment, they will be everywhere. They will be impossible to contain or control. Should they be controlled? Asked quietly. The question hung in the air. No one answered immediately. I do not know, sir, finally said, but the council will certainly ask that question. The return journey took 5 days. During that time, reviewed his notes and prepared his presentation. He knew he would face skepticism and fear. He needed to be ready. When they arrived at the Dominion capital, was immediately summoned before the council. The chamber was vast and imposing, with the 7 council members seated in a semicircle above him. Their faces showed varying degrees of concern and curiosity. Captain, the council leader began. We have read your preliminary report. Some of us find it difficult to believe. I understand, Counselor said. I found it difficult to believe myself. That is why I documented everything extensively. I have medical scans, environmental readings, video records, and genetic analyses. The data supports every claim I made. You say these humans have adapted to lethal radiation in only 3 generations, another council member said. That contradicts everything we know about evolutionary biology. Yes, agreed, but it happened. I watched children playing in radiation that would kill us in minutes. I saw adults working in conditions that should be instantly fatal. Their biology has changed at the genetic level to handle environmental stresses that would destroy most species. And you believe there are more colonies like this one? The council leader asked. At least 15 that the humans know about, confirmed. Possibly more, each one adapting to different extreme conditions, each one proving that human biology is more flexible than we ever imagined. The council members discussed this among themselves for several minutes. Finally, the leader spoke again. "What is your recommendation, Captain?" Had thought about this question for days. "I recommend we establish diplomatic relations with the human colonies, share information, learn from each other. The humans at Haven's Edge gave me samples of their research freely. They want cooperation, not conflict." "And if they continue to expand?" another counselor asked. "If they settle more and more worlds that we have dismissed as worthless, what happens when there are hundreds of human colonies scattered across the galaxy?" "Then we adapt," said. "Just as they have adapted, we find ways to coexist. We recognize that the galaxy is large enough for multiple approaches to survival." "You sound like you admire them," a counselor said with what might have been disapproval. "I do," said honestly. "They survived impossible conditions through determination and flexibility. They did not conquer their environment with force or technology. They became part of it. That takes a different kind of strength than what we possess, but it is strength nonetheless." The council leader considered this. "Your honesty is noted, Captain. We will discuss your recommendations. In the meantime, you are ordered not to share this information with anyone outside this council." "Understood, Counselor," said. The meeting ended and was dismissed. As he walked through the corridors of the government complex, he felt a deep unease. The council was afraid. He had seen it in their eyes. That night could not sleep. He kept thinking about the humans he had met, about Daniel and his quiet leadership, about Karen and her impossible machines, about Gregory and his revolutionary medical research, about the children who represented something entirely new. He thought about what it said during the education session, about combining biological adaptation with technological enhancement, about finding a middle path between nature and civilization. They had spent centuries believing that technology was the only path to advancement, that biology was something to be overcome, not embraced, that the measure of a species was how well they could reshape the universe to their will. But the humans had proven there was another way, a way that worked with the universe instead of against it, a way that accepted change instead of fighting it. Which approach was better? Did not know, maybe neither was better, maybe they were just different, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. But he knew one thing for certain: the galaxy would never be the same. The discovery of Haven's Edge and the other human colonies would force every species to reconsider what they thought they knew about survival and adaptation. The Dominion had built its power on controlling the easy worlds and ignoring the hard ones. But the humans were claiming those hard worlds and thriving on them. In doing so, they were becoming something new and potentially very powerful. Not powerful because of weapons or fleets or territory. Powerful because they could go anywhere and become anything. Because they refused to be limited by what was supposed to be possible. 3 weeks later, received a message from the Council. They had made their decision. The Dominion would establish limited diplomatic contact with Haven's Edge and other human colonies. They would share some information and study human adaptation. But they would also be cautious, watching for any signs of aggressive expansion. It was not perfect, but it was a start, a beginning of understanding between two very different species. Sent a message to Daniel, informing him of the Council's decision. The response came back within a day. "Thank you for speaking for us, Captain. We look forward to learning from your people, and we hope you can learn from us. Maybe together we can find new ways to thrive in this vast galaxy." Read the message several times. There was hope in those words, hope for cooperation, hope for mutual understanding, hope for a future where different approaches to survival could coexist peacefully. He saved the message and filed his final report. Then he sat at his desk and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humans were living on worlds that should have killed them. They were adapting and evolving. They were proving that life always finds a way. And the Dominion, with all its power and technology, had been humbled by the simple determination of a species that refused to give up. It was a lesson worth remembering. Strength came in many forms. Technology was one form, But the will to survive, to adapt, to become something new when necessary, that was another form entirely. The humans had that will, and now the galaxy knew it. Smiled slightly, Daniel had asked him whether being discovered was good or bad, to ask again in 10 years. He suspected that in 10 years, the answer would be both. Good because it opened doors for understanding and cooperation. Bad because it would force every species to confront their own limitations and assumptions. But mostly good, he hoped, because the universe needed more examples of species that could overcome the impossible. It needed proof that determination and adaptability could triumph over any obstacle. The humans of Haven's Edge had provided that proof. Now it was up to the rest of the galaxy to decide what to do with it. Turned off his desk light and prepared to rest. Tomorrow he would start working on new survey missions, but he would never forget what he had seen on that radiation-soaked planet. He would never forget the humans who had refused to die. And he would spend the rest of his life wondering what they would become next. And that thought was exactly what made it so important. The humans of Haven's Edge had proven that the impossible was possible, that life could find a way even in the harshest conditions, that adaptation was not just about survival, but about transformation. The Dominion needed to understand that. The entire galaxy needed to understand that. Because if humans could do this here, there was no telling what they might achieve elsewhere. Plain that humans are not limited by their biology, but empowered by it. How do you admit that your empire's greatest strength might be another species' greatest weakness? He did not know, but he had to try. He had come to this planet expecting to find a curiosity, maybe some hardy bacteria or simple life forms that had found a way to survive. Instead, he had found something that would change how the Dominion viewed humanity forever. And he had a feeling the humans knew it. As the humans began pulling up files and records on their simple computer systems, realized something that made his hearts beat faster. These humans were not afraid of what the Dominion might think. They were not worried about how this discovery might change things. They were confident, absolutely, completely confident. And that terrified him more than anything else he had seen today.